What's going on, guys? Tyler Breeze, Prince Pretty King of Qville, definition of delish, all that stuff. And you're here on Counted Out.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill Apter Seal of Approve Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler. I am back once again, as always, with the one and only Mojito Mike. And Mike, we're celebrating this week. Bengals finally get a win, brother.
Fuck, someone had to win this week because it wasn't either of us. So I'm glad somebody got the W. And listen, I don't want to talk about football too much this week. Last couple of weeks talked about football a lot. I will say this though. Since you've introduced fantasy football into my life, I've realized one thing. Do you know what makes fantasy football better than a woman?
I don't know.
Well, like, I realize sometimes the woman's just not in the mood, right? But fantasy football will always fuck you.
That is correct.
God damn it.
That
Not a
is
good
correct.
week. Not a good week.
I put up the lowest week of fantasy football scoring I've ever done in my entire life. Three of my players' combined score was negative negative 0.4. So that was a good time for me.
I learned that you just can't, like, I know you already told me not to like pay too much attention to the projections and stuff, but when you go into it and it tells you the projections and you look and you have an 82% chance of beating the person you're up against, and then within 4 hours that changes to you having a 13% chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that
No
goes into that
bueno.
though.
Oh.
Some people don't set their lineups till right before the show, right? Right
Mhm.
before the first game. So the projections don't mean anything.
Yeah.
But alas, that's our fantasy football update for the week. For those of you keeping tabs,
There's got to be at least one person entertained by this, and the
there
rest
are
of
a
you are
few.
just
I've gotten
telling
a
us
few
to shut the hell up.
messages. I've got a few messages of it. That would bring my record to 2-1 on the year. I'm sitting in seventh place in the league. Mike, you are at 1-2 as of
Yeah.
right now because the week is not over
Well,
yet.
yeah, well, it is for me. That'll bring me to two. That'll bring me to 3-1, or
1-3, and
1-3.
I'll be
Yeah.
at 2-2. So yeah, that's where we're standing right now. We'll give you updates on our standings every week. As of recording, I'm in seventh place. Mike is in second last place. Those will change drastically over the next couple of days.
It'll change for you. It won't change for me. I already did the math. I'll stay exactly where I am.
The math ain't mathin'. Well, either way,
But
big
let's
big
talk
week.
about let's talk about the good thing that came out of the league or the bad thing. I don't know. We'll talk about it. I don't know how you feel. You and I haven't discussed this yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's cool about this week's show. You and I have both watched the Vince McMahon documentary in its entirety.
Well, and
Yet
before we talk about the
we
Vince
have not
documentary,
discussed it. So I'm excited about this.
we'll just let everybody know this week is I'll be doing the list. It is the top 7 interpromotional moments between wrestling companies.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be the list we will get to later on. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about the Vince McMahon documentary. Have you finished it all?
I have. Yeah,
I
I
have
did.
as well. I have as
Yeah.
well. Um, it far it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Really? Okay.
It far exceeded my
What were you expecting then?
I was expecting a lot more bullshit and not as much. There was a lot of fact checking that I wasn't expecting and a lot
Sure.
more honesty and I learned some things that I didn't know either throughout the documentary. So it was a lot better. Um, it was incredibly interesting just
Mm-hmm.
to hear Vince McMahon talk like this
Yeah.
to an extent.
To an extent.
He was very guarded as well, but the guards came down more than one occasion. And yeah, he's a weird guy, man.
He just seems like I think everything we wondered about him is true. I think the years of just reclusivity and the way he treats himself, it all has affected him in a way that he's just a strange man. And that definitely came out in this DVD, in this documentary. I find when he did get candid, when he did talk about things, like near the end of it, when he's talking about how his brain works. And I found this extremely interesting, how he got very vulnerable talking about this is, my brain doesn't work like normal people's brains. I'm off this way, I'm off that way, I'm out this way.
There are three
I'm
different
thinking,
brains, he says.
he says it's very difficult to rein them all in. And then the guy flat out said, "Well, what are you thinking about right now?" And he goes, "So having fun, something to do with sex." And and I just giggled because that's not the answer you would expect out of a 70-year-old man. That's not, and I don't think he has any social cues. Like, he's far too old to have ever been tested for the spectrum or Asperger's or something like that. But if you were to tell me right now that Vince McMahon had Asperger's, I'd believe you because I don't feel like he has those social cues. Like he doesn't understand things to say and things not to say, and I think he just lets it kind of blurt out. And I found it very very interesting. Um, and then I do want to say one thing about this documentary as a whole because there are a lot of fans. I'm glad you said what you said about it because there are a lot of fans complaining, saying that we didn't learn a whole lot that we didn't know and that it was kind of boring and it was kind of full of bullshit. And I want people to understand one thing. This documentary wasn't made for us. This was not for the wrestling fan. And I think that's a very important thing to realize. This was for the people who don't know who Vince McMahon is, people who don't know about professional wrestling. To this was so that they could learn about everything this world is about, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think if I'm correct on that assumption, I think it did its job very well. Don't you?
Well, I agree and disagree to an extent on that. Like this thing is 100% made for wrestling fans as well, because Vince McMahon doesn't do stuff like this. This is a huge thing. This is a huge thing. Vince, when is the last
Mm-hmm.
time I can think of two interviews that Vince, and this is including the Netflix documentary. I can think two times over the last 15 years that I've heard Vince do an interview.
Well, as I say, there a lot of things that came out though. We already kind of saw with, let's say, the Playboy interview. He got very vulnerable with the Playboy interview all those years ago.
That was
And
in the 90s though.
yeah,
Okay, so that was 20 over 20 years ago.
yeah, but you say he never does it. I'm saying a lot of the stuff that we got on this was regurgitated from stuff we got 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
I don't agree with that at
We
all.
we we got stuff regurgitated from the Playboy interview. We got stuff
Well,
regurgitated
they
from
covered it.
Landsberg. We got stuff regurgitated from Costa.
Yeah, they
You
covered,
know,
but they had to cover all that stuff. But I'm
hmm
talk, but we got a new
I don't feel
Vince.
I don't feel we learned much new outside of that.
I took away a tremendous amount from this documentary. I
Okay.
I learned so much about Vince McMahon, the person, watching him talk.
See, I
And
I I I didn't because all the information I feel
I'm
like I
not
already
talking
knew.
about the information. I'm talking about the man. I feel like I look at Vince McMahon in a completely different light here.
Hmm.
This is a guy who has severe childhood trauma.
Oh yes, yes,
Severe, and it's
hmm
very apparent, and you
yeah,
can see the trickle down.
yes.
From being an abusive relationship with a stepfather, sexually assaulted, it sounds like, by his mother.
And again, we did know this stuff, but let's
Well,
before you go,
I
what?
got a big rabbit hole to go down here, so
Yeah, I just want to cover your ass for a second. I want everybody to understand. I'm going to speak for Tyler in a second. Anything he says right now, I don't want anybody to ever think that this show or Tyler is using the trauma or abusiveness that I went through to condone anything he did in
Oh
his
my
life.
God, no. But if you, yeah, like let me keep going here.
Yes.
I'm talking about what I'm learning about a human being right now.
Hmm.
I'm not even covered. Like to me, this is not, these are two different things, Mike. I'm not
Hmm.
saying, oh, this guy's got
No, I know
issues.
you're not saying. I just want to make it very clear to the listeners.
No, what I'm talking about is his characteristics as a human being. And
Hmm.
I don't think that people realize. Like the first takeaway I took as soon as they started talking about his childhood is this explains a lot about how he is as a person.
Yeah,
This explains a lot about his ruthless side, that
for sure.
his cold side, his business side, whatever. But even deeper than that, this guy doesn't know anything about anything unless it
No.
is professional wrestling. He is
Yeah.
so secluded into this bubble that he doesn't know how to be outside of this bubble. And
Which,
it's and that I think that in his world, in his brain, not in the real world, because I don't
mm,
condone any of his shit. But in
mm,
his brain, he can do whatever he wants.
yeah.
I can be with whatever woman I want. I can
He,
fuck over any wrestler I want. I
he
can
has
do whatever I
created
want.
he has created this universe in which he is God.
Yeah, but
100%.
he doesn't know that there's a world outside of that. Like the hearing him talk about anything, and you hear so many people that work with him, like the story that always comes to my mind is one Chris Jericho tells about when Mickey Rourke was at WrestleMania,
Hmm.
and he thought Jericho was going to try to fight him, so he brought like Frank Shamrock and a couple bouncers, right? Frank Shamrock, pretty bad dude, man, pretty
Yeah.
badass dude, and Vince was laughing because Jericho's like, like he brought those guys to like have us back and maybe fight us, and Vince goes, me, you, and Finley could take all those guys down. And then he goes, look how small that guy is, and he's pointing at Frank Shamrock. And Jericho laughed at him and said, "Okay, Vince, I'll take the big guy. You take the little guy." Then,
Yeah.
like, he
Good
just
luck.
doesn't get it. He doesn't understand that. Like,
No. And we've seen little things like this in the past too, where, you know, which always really surprised me because he's the one who wanted to break out and not be professional wrestling, who wanted to be entertainment and wanted to compete with the entertainment world. Yet he doesn't know anything about the entertainment world. I remember a story way back when it was they were doing Shelton Benjamin's Mama thing. He didn't know what they were doing. He didn't know they were parodying Big Mama's House because he'd never heard of it.
mhm.
You go to Razor Ramon, him shooting the Scarface thing. Vince thought Scott was a genius because he comes up with this character because he's never seen Scarface, never heard of Scarface. How does somebody that wants to compete with entertainment and be in entertainment and even go as far as buy a movie company at one point in time know nothing about movies or film or actors or anything. He knows nothing.
I think he did
It's
that to
very
keep his
surprising
talent.
to me. Very surprising to me.
I think he did the movie thing to keep his talent. I don't think he wanted to lose anybody, right?
Of course, he
But
wanted to give them something to do, and at
I
that point in time too, I always thought that I understand hindsight's 2020. It didn't work out in the end, but when they started that movie company, I thought it was a great idea
I
because
did not.
because you're no longer the World Wrestling Federation. You are now World Wrestling Entertainment. He wanted to branch out, and see what this entertainment thing can be. Well, what's the next thing? The network? Yeah, absolutely. Your own movie studio, making your own movies. I thought it was a great idea, and you know what? There's a couple not bad flicks that came out of that. So
And many more awful flicks that came out of it. So I can tell you I did not watch many WWE studio movies.
I probably watched them all. At least the first of each. Like I didn't watch every single Marine movie or every single Condemned movie, but I definitely watched the first of each, and I watched I watched that See No Evil one. I mean that wasn't horrible. I I have a soft spot in my heart for the Chaperone. I thought that was a fun, cute little movie. I did.
Yeah.
What was it? What was that one? There
I
was one
think
Randy Orton did that I thought was really good.
I think I watched The Marine, and that was it for me. It wasn't awful. The rest of them I will not watch. I will not
You
waste my
never saw it.
time.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! You never saw The Condemned?
No, and I won't.
Oh, dude, no, no, no! You do yourself a favor.
I
You
won't.
like you
I'm gonna do myself a favor by not watching it.
you like action movies. The Condemned is
I do.
great. Yes,
You think it's great. It is a
it
great
the
movie. That is
The Condemned is a
the
really good movie.
we're gonna quote Mike Walsh. The Condemned is great.
Go watch The Condemned.
I will not. I
I
will not watch
guarantee
it.
there's people listening here. They're going, Tyler, just watch it.
That's good for those
Yeah.
people. I listen, I don't have a lot of spare time right now. I'm working a lot of hours, a lot of
I didn't
double
say right now, but the movie's
No,
been out for
but
20 years. I mean,
exactly. If I haven't got to it by now, there's so many other things
uh,
that are ahead of it on
you're
the list. I will
you're
not be
silly.
watching it. I will
You're
not be
silly.
watching it.
You're silly.
Absolutely not. The Vince documentary, though, I'll go back to something you said. I have a lot of non-wrestling people reaching out to me about it. My father-in-law
Hmm.
watched it. My
Hmm.
fiance watched it as well, and they both really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
To the point where my fiance fell asleep like watching an episode, so I put it on late. So I
Hmm.
watched without her, and then when
Sure.
I went to work, she watched it. Like she went
Wow.
back and watched like
Yeah.
what she missed. Um, I thought it was really interesting to hear him talk about things that we haven't heard him talk about candidly because he
Hmm.
wasn't able to,
Yeah.
because he had to be business mode. Listening to him talk about the Owen Hart situation, I've never heard him speak like that about it
Yeah.
because he wasn't allowed to, because he
Yeah.
had to play the business part.
Yeah.
Hearing the name Chris Benoit come out of his mouth was
Hmm.
intriguing. Um, I do think that this documentary painted a very fair picture of who Vince McMahon was. I don't think it was a slam piece. I
And that's what everything's coming out. Oh, it was a hit piece. It was a slam piece. Like I'm hearing fans say it. I'm hearing Vince himself say it. I'm hearing all these people. Bruce Pritchard went on a big rant about it.
well, okay,
I
yeah, look at who's saying it, right?
Well, that's it, right? I didn't see it like that. I didn't see it as a slam piece at all. I did not see them shine a negative light on Vince any worse than it could have been a lot worse for one.
Well, but if
And
there the things like if it were to be a slam piece, like if you didn't think that there was going to be stuff like that on it, maybe don't do shitty things, Vince.
hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they just told things that have been told or
Now
allegated or
the only time that they I feel like there was a directorial choice to kind of make him look dumb, but I found it really funny was when they're doing the thing where Vince is like, "Listen, the Attitude Era wasn't as bad as people think it was. You know, there there was no rape," and then it has him going, "You rapist." There was no guns and knives. And you see Brian Pillman with the gun. There was no this, there was no that, and they proved him wrong every single time.
yeah, well, then don't say stupid things.
Exactly.
They did the same
Um,
thing about WrestleMania 3.
yeah.
I thought that Dave Meltzer really came across great on this documentary, and this is the Dave Meltzer that I really enjoy. This
Mhm.
is like, let's talk about history, Dave
Yeah.
Meltzer. When he's in that historian role and
Yeah.
going back and talking about things and not in AEW mode,
Yeah.
I am a big Dave Meltzer fan. I am, and I thought he was incredible, and he brought a lot of credibility to this documentary. I thought, with coming out with these facts. I thought Hulk Hogan came across like an idiot in this documentary.
As he normally does.
And
And
it was
a liar,
yeah,
as he normally does.
I thought Bruce Pritchard came across poorly in this documentary, especially at the end when he saw the cuts and was, this thing's terrible. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And yes, hey, Bruce, I get it. Vince and that story about, Vince taking care of Bruce's wife when he was sick, and
Mhm. That's a beautiful
that's a
story.
beautiful story. And and it's not like Vince doesn't do things like that also. He pays for everybody to go to rehab. He
Hmm.
pay, he's done great things as well. Vince is not this, well, he is a monster, but he's not, he has done nice things as well, right?
Yeah.
And they showcase that. I thought they did showcase
I
both
mean,
sides of Vince.
and they left shit out too. I mean, they easily could have put in the fact that he helped cover up a murder done by Jimmy Snuka. You know,
Allegedly.
they didn't put in everything, so maybe Bruce should be a little happy about stuff like that. Um,
I thought Stone Cold Steve Austin came
okay,
across really poorly in this.
and this is what I want to ask you about. What were your thoughts on the whole section on CTE? Because I think a few people, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Vince McMahon, a few people came off really dumb in this.
Yeah, I'm less surprised about Vince coming across poorly than Austin, because Austin's a smart guy, and I just figured he would have done a
If
lot
Vince
more
if
research on
Vince
it.
would have left it at, I don't think CTE um made Benoit kill his family. I think he went down a spiral and became a monster, blah blah blah. If you would have left it at that, I would have been okay, that's your opinion. I don't agree with you, but that's your opinion. But then he goes on and on and on and talks about how, oh, that whole thing with Undertaker, he wasn't concussed. He was just traumatized by losing that match.
Yeah,
Are you high?
yeah. Vince was in the hospital. Vince left WrestleMania to go to the hospital with the Undertaker.
How disrespectful to the Undertaker, a man who's had your back. Because Undertaker did not say a single bad word about him in that documentary.
Undertaker broke down in tears talking about
You,
Vince McMahon in this
you know,
documentary.
Undertaker has had your back for 30 years, and you disrespect him by saying something like that. That's horseshit.
Yeah. John Cena was playing things very, very close to the chest,
That
which
makes that makes sense.
which is smart because
Yeah,
I don't think he knew what this thing was going to be. Um, I thought Eric Bischoff was really good in this documentary.
yeah.
I thought
I don't think we got anything more or anything less than I expected from Bischoff.
I thought
Um,
the star of the documentary was Tony Atlas. God, was he something else?
I didn't like Pat because he always grabbed my pecker.
Yeah.
Oh my God! And you know what? I love that they threw Pat in there for the
The
for the
Ring Boy
devil's advocate
scandal.
role, basically to be devil's advocate, because you're showing Vince adamantly saying that Pat did nothing wrong. Then you have Bruce Pritchard adamantly saying that Pat did nothing wrong. You have other people saying, "Oh, Pat was a good guy. Pat was a good guy," and then you swing to Tony Atlas. Yeah, he used to grab my dick.
And that's a tough
Yeah,
one because how credible of a guy is Tony Atlas? You know what I mean?
true.
Like that's, but I do like everyone was very adamant that Pat was not involved in the Ring Boy scandal.
Yeah.
They did not say anything
Well,
else about the boys, right?
I it was Ronnie Garvin really took the fall for that one.
But no, not wasn't it Mel Phillips?
Well, but no one ever had Garvin's back the way they did have the way they had Pat's, right?
Terry Garvin, not Ron
Oh,
Garvin.
did I say Ronnie? I
Yeah.
apologize. Terry
No,
Garvin.
I was like, hold on here. Hands of Stone was he was not involved in that. Um I did. I enjoyed the documentary.
As did I.
I
I'm
I
interested in knowing what was supposedly left on the cutting room floor. Apparently, there's a lot of stuff, according to Vince. There's a lot of stuff that was not shown. Um,
well, yeah, obviously they only
I
have so much time.
I'd be interested to know what could possibly be on the cutting room floor to make him look better.
I don't think anything.
Well, that's it, right?
But
What?
they covered everything. I thought the whole first episode like was very kind of Vince. Like it was the rise of Vince, you know. They showed how
Also,
he
I feel like Vince kind of fucked himself over in the very beginning when he's like, "Oh, I wish I could tell you the real stories." Come on, man. What we're supposed to be having right now is a documentary where you show us the real Vince.
yeah, but
And you basically just told us that we're not getting that.
we don't know where they grabbed that soundbite from though.
True,
Right?
true.
Like there's a
Okay,
lot
let's
like that's that
let's go with that. Yeah, you're right.
I thought I'm glad that they included the Janelle Grant stuff in the documentary.
Well, they kind of had to, right?
The best that they could, right? Because it's still happening.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that came out. I'm glad that we saw the resignation of Vince. I did think that there were some parts where, like Vince definitely comes across as a strong hypocrite, though. Like when he was talking about how when he like took all the talent and did the expansion, but then when WCW did it, oh, and I love that
But then,
Bischoff called him out on that.
but what I like is he kind of mentioned that later on too, near the end, where he said, was who was he attacking? Was it maybe Bischoff saying that all everything that Eric did um, during this period was copy me anyways, including stealing my talent. That's what I did to everybody else. And I had a big laugh at that. I'm like, okay, so when are you going to admit that everything you did from 1996 to 2001 was ripping off ECW?
Well, I was just going to say that, and that's something we're going to talk about in a little bit when we
Right?
get to my list. But yeah, the Attitude Era was a complete ripoff of ECW, much like the NWO was a ripoff of an angle from Japan. Uh,
Exactly.
um, I really enjoyed Bret Hart on this documentary as well.
You always do.
He was great. I thought Bret
Yeah.
Hart was not even bitter Bret Hart this time. I thought he was just genuine.
Yeah.
He broke down into tears talking about his the screw job and
Mhm.
what it affected him, obviously, and obviously
Yeah.
we know that. I thought his recount of the story when he punched out Vince was the best soundbite of the whole documentary. I laughed so hard. I laughed so hard when he's like, I don't know what this bullshit is they're talking about. He gave me a free shot. He's like, we were wrestling, and I knew I had one shot to hit him with an uppercut, and it's the
And I do
greatest
think
thing I ever did.
I do think he's full of shit.
Who, Brett?
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't think there was an uppercut involved. Vince says he hit him in the temple. He says he come up with an uppercut. Vince comes out with a black eye. He definitely hit him in the temple. There was no uppercut.
Yeah,
Now
but
I can
why?
things
But
get
you can uppercut somebody like that, Mike. If what Brett's story is saying they were wrestling, that means
yeah,
Vince's head would be down. Boom, uppercut right to the eye.
yeah, I guess.
Right? Like it wasn't if it was a free shot, like there's no way that Brett would have just walked up and punched Vince for free. Well, he probably
Well,
would
because
have, but
no, well, he may have, but where's the challenge in that? Where's the where
yeah.
he definitely wouldn't be bragging about it today.
No,
Let's say that.
no. And I believe Brett over Vince. Like
Oh yeah.
I've never found Brett to be a liar. I found him to be bitter. I found him to be angry, but I've never found him to
Mm,
lie.
yeah. All right.
What has he lied about?
I don't know. I'm not willing to agree with you until I'm not.
After reading his book,
Yeah.
I he was very open about not being the most faithful person on the planet, and like
He flip flops a lot, and that bothers me. So maybe he's not a liar, but he's a flip flopper.
yeah, he stays pretty consistent with certain things.
Yeah, it depends who he's talking to and who's in front of him.
I mean, we all flip
As
flop, right?
as long as your back's to him, he'll talk all the shit. Turn around
I only ever really see him flip flop on Triple H.
and Vince, he literally just said, "I love Vince McMahon" just a couple days ago.
Yeah,
Like,
he's always said that though.
he,
He's always said that Vince was a father to him. He said that from day one.
yeah.
But I thought that was good. The Owen Hart stuff was just to go back and listen to that again, and how Vince wouldn't change his mind about it. Like that's just ridiculous.
I would like to put some sort of rule or law into place that this documentary, after this, we never need to ever talk about, hear about, or document about the Montreal Screwjob ever again. I'm already sick and tired of hearing it. I think this is the last place it ever needs to be told, and we
Yeah,
don't have to hear
and
about it
and it
anymore,
had to
ever
be
again.
it had to be
It
in
had
there.
to be. It had to be. But I can't think of any scenario ever again where we need to have it part of it anymore.
Not
Though
like a special on it or anything.
I will say this: I'm very glad that before that they got to the screw job, that they talked about the Wendy Richter stuff, because I
Yeah,
think a lot of people don't know the Wendy Richter story. So the fact that they did that before they did the screw job, I think was very smart.
and
Kind of,
even Vince's
paint the
attitude,
picture, right?
Vince's attitude towards that was just like fuck her.
Yeah.
Like it's just
And
crazy.
this is the one time in history I take Vince McMahon's spot, and that's on both the Wendy Richter situation and the Brett situation.
I
That's not
I
that's always been my stance. That is not your belt. That's the WWE's belt. That's a prop. That's you don't want to give it up. Well, we'll take it from you. I've
well,
always been on Vince's side for this one.
I'm not on Vince's side on Montreal. I don't know enough of the facts on Wendy Richter to take a side, so I will not. But I think that there was
Your boss
there.
tells you to do something, you fucking do it.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
No, you don't.
You
If my
do.
boss tells me to do something, I have the right to refuse work.
that you have the right to refuse unsafe work. Dropping
Mhm.
the title wasn't unsafe work.
So Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels got in a backstage fight 2 months before that happened.
Yeah,
I could view that as being unsafe if I wanted it to be.
yeah.
I don't want to work with him.
Too
It's not
bad Brett
safe.
caused an unsafe work environment.
Well, Shawn did just as much, right? But Bret also was not refusing to drop the belt. He just said, I won't drop it to Shawn.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Well, too. Well, I do.
Well, I know, but
Well,
I mean, I think that's just an old school mind frame. Is you have the right to say no to things. You do. Your job doesn't own you. They pay you. But you have the
yeah.
right. You have the
No,
right. You
I
have the
pay
right to
you
say
to
things.
do something. You don't
Yeah.
want to do that. Fucking walk out. And that's what.
Again,
And
you're
that was
living
the
in the
thing. He
Stone
was already
Ages, though.
gone.
But that's
Yeah,
Stone Age. That's Stone Age talk, Mike.
it is not.
You're talking like a restaurant manager from 20 years ago. That's what I used to be too. But it's not like that. You can discuss things. You don't have just because you tell me to do something, I can have a
There
conversation with
was
you
no
about it.
discussion there. He flat out refused to do it, and he refused to talk about it. He
Well,
refused
that's not
to go any
true.
farther.
He
So they
talked
made the
about it
fucking
multiple
decision for
times.
him. Fuck him.
He talked about it
Fuck him.
multiple times. He said, "I'll drop the belt to the Brooklyn Brawler." He said that flat out. I'll drop it to anybody on the roster except for Shawn.
Okay,
I'll drop
cool.
it to
So you just proved
Shamrock.
yourself. So you just proved your own point.
What's
Vince
that?
lied. The Brett lied because he wouldn't have done that, and you know it.
100% he would have done that.
Nah, I
You
wouldn't.
don't think he would
Brett's a
have
liar.
dropped the belt to Ken Shamrock? He offered to do
Brett's
that
a
many times.
Brett's a liar.
But yeah, you absolutely can say no to things, man. Just because you're
Yeah.
a boss doesn't mean you can fucking boss people around all the time. Like
That's
there's
Vince's property. I
of
say
course.
give it to me. You give it to me.
Well, he could have gave it to. He said, "You want it? Here you go." He didn't have to. Brett didn't have to have a match at all. He could have flat out refused to do it. You also have to remember that Vince intentionally breached Brett's contract at that point too. Like Vince did a lot of shady shit to Brett around that point. Let me sign you for 20 years, and then I'm going to tell you no. Sorry.
Yeah. See that part. I'm willing to concede to you because I don't know the legalities about the actual contract stuff. Like I don't know where that lies. I know, like you said, he signed a 20-year contract and then tried to back out.
Yeah, well, he did.
But
He said,
but
"I'm backing out."
yeah, but
Didn't try
he
to.
also, and they said this in the documentary, there was a ton of legal loopholes worked into it. So he did nothing illegal. Now, shady, 100%. I can't argue on that. Is it what he did wasn't illegal? Was it fucking immoral?
It could have
I'm
been
pretty,
illegal.
I'm pretty,
Vince
I'm pretty sure
showed
it's
Brett
Vince's.
the loopholes. Vince showed them to Brett. Brett
Yeah.
didn't have to go through that channel. He did. He didn't
No, but
have to.
what I mean by loopholes, I'm pretty sure that Vince created loopholes um in that 20-year contract to get himself out of it.
I'm sure there
So
was stuff in
if
there,
if
absolutely.
you needed to, you know.
But that being said, I
I
would
mean,
have.
hell, when Jerry McDivitt is your lawyer, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's fair. You can, and Vince
Are
has
you
proven that.
surprised Jerry wasn't on that documentary at all?
I was because he did Dark Side of the Ring, so I was really
Yeah,
surprised that we didn't hear from Jerry.
right.
But
I was surprised not to see it.
unless Jerry's still
What?
representing Vince to this day, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
But if he is still representing Vince, then no, I'm not surprised.
Is there anyone else you expected to see and didn't, or people you wish we would have heard from?
Um, Not really.
I thought we would see a little bit more of, or I thought we'd see some Jim Cornette. I really did.
I
I was,
did not think we would see Cornette at all.
just because he's such a vocal person
Yeah, but he's a
in
gimmick.
and
Like
out there.
he has nothing to do with Vince.
I sort of wish that they interviewed Sable.
Yeah, that would have been fine. I would have
Yeah,
been fine with that.
I
Um,
I was kind of surprised they didn't.
Maybe they tried to. Who knows? Her and Brock,
Possibly.
her and Brock are very private people now, so wouldn't surprise me if they reach out to her and she
Yeah.
said no. But
Or even more of the old any of the living territory guys like Greg. How I'm surprised they didn't get Greg on or anybody else that was affected by the territory deal.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that, I guess, but I I don't think it was necessary. I
No,
think
probably not.
I think that they covered it enough of what it needed to be.
Mhm.
I don't think hearing a bunch of
I mean,
older
there's also not a lot of them alive, right?
no,
Like
and like call a spade, but they're old guys that are bitter that Vince put them out of business, right?
yeah,
Like I don't think they're gonna add a lot to the documentary.
no. No,
I think they
I
I
just
think they got everybody that they needed to get. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I thought Shane McMahon was really good in this documentary. Like
me too.
you really felt for Shane, you
Hmm.
know? Like I just felt bad for Shane listening to his stories and his relationship with his dad. And I thought Stephanie didn't really come across great. Like she didn't say anything bad, but
Okay.
she didn't seem genuine to me either.
I don't know if she knows how to be.
I
I
think
think there's a
she's like
big
her dad.
I think there's a big difference between Shane and Stephanie. I think Shane, just like the whole thing of Shane knowing when to leave WWE, um, I think Shane knows the difference between his character and himself.
Well, Tony Atlas said it the best. Shane's a nice guy,
Yeah.
and Stephanie's not. Like
Well,
Steph,
where's I don't think Stephanie. I'm not gonna say she doesn't know the difference between her and her character. I'm not gonna say that, but I don't think she knows when to turn off. I think she's always business. She's like her dad in that sense, where she's always business. She's always on. I mean, I think there's a reason she went from being the boss's daughter to marrying a man who would become the most powerful man in the business. There's
well, that was another
it's
telling
that
point too. Like
that's
that
just been her life for the last 30 years. Her life has been this position in this company. I
when
don't know if she knows how to turn that off.
I think she's been better at it recently because she did step away from the company, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but I agree with that up until a couple of years ago for sure. But I thought it was really another telling Vince thing was when he was upset at them for not wanting to do their wedding on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
And he couldn't understand it. Why
He
wouldn't you want
didn't.
to do this? Like,
Yeah.
because it's our fucking wedding, man. Like, get a grip. Like,
Though those were the only times, and we saw this in the McMahon DVD years ago. The only times I ever saw a really humanized Stephanie was when she tells stories about saying no to her dad, the impregnation angle, and the wedding on TV, where she's just like, "Let me live my life outside here. Let me do this." And you see Triple H in the same interviews. He's like, "No, man, no." And I like seeing those human sides of those. Up until today, up until this documentary, I never feel we ever saw that from Vince ever, and we got just a glimpse of it. I don't think we got nearly past the surface of his human side, but we got a glimpse. I think.
Of Vince's human side.
Yeah,
I think Vince was being very, very reserved. And just from what you read about the interviews too, he was never alone for any of the interviews. People had
yeah,
to remind him of a lot of things.
yeah.
Um,
Now he is in his late 70s. Whether he believes in CTE or not, I would not be the the slightest bit surprised if he suffers from CTE
he's
with all the chair
taken
shots and shit that
many
he's
big shots to
taken
the
in the
head.
years.
The drug use
And
and the drinking over the years probably doesn't
and
help either.
Linda herself came out not long ago talking about how he wasn't in the greatest health
Allegedly,
over the last
they
allegedly.
backtracked. That was backtracked pretty quickly as well. 'Cause
So
it
we
wasn't
don't know.
Linda directly that said that. It was a friend of Linda's that came out and said that.
Oh, I didn't. Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't realize
Linda
that.
didn't release a statement. It was
I see.
somebody close to Linda McMahon has said this,
Oh, okay.
but who knows? Oh, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's pretty much all you can talk about with this documentary that we can keep going on. I mean, I would highly recommend checking it out, wrestling fan or non-wrestling fan. You can form your own opinions on the man. That's what it's all about. I did not leave this documentary thinking Vince was a good person. Granted,
No,
I didn't go into this documentary thinking he was a good person.
exactly.
Um, but it was definitely interesting to hear how his mind works.
Yeah,
And that was fascinating to me.
I agree.
But I don't know. What do you think? You wanna move
I
on to a little bit of list action
that
here?
let's do our list.
So lots of fun times going on in wrestling right now. A lot of companies working together.
Love it.
So I thought maybe we would take a look back into time at some of the greatest interpromotional moments.
Love that.
I really kind of, with the exception of like a one thing, I kind of kept matches off of the list
Okay.
because there's just so many. Like that's a list on its own. best
Sure.
interpromotional matches or whatever.
Okay.
But I kind of cheat coded a little bit, and we'll get to that as we go.
Because some matches can be moments,
A hundred
it's
percent, a hundred
yeah.
percent. And just like for and we'll get to that with a couple of them as we go here. But
Cool.
yeah, let's jump right into it here with
All
the
right.
number
You all right.
7. So we've got a run in here for my number 7, but I think it's going to be fun times here. So let's get into my list. Let me pull it up here. The good old number 7.
Good old number 7.
We're going to go back to the very early days of Ring of Honor. And it is Eddie
Okay.
Guerrero as the
Yeah.
WWF Intercontinental Champion, fulfilling his commitments with Ring of Honor.
Yeah. Which I'm so happy they let him do, and I'm so happy that he chose to do. This is
Yeah.
great stuff.
Yeah, this was just it's a time when you couldn't do that stuff, but I think this is part of the reason why they brought Eddie back is because he was doing stuff like this. He
Mhm.
really cleared his name, and Ring of Honor this was their third show ever. He was like
Yeah.
he main evented their first show, and I don't think like if Ring of Honor didn't grow to what it would have been, that I wouldn't have put this on the list. But
No, probably not.
to look back at those early days of Ring of Honor and to see like just the video montage that they make and Eddie Guerrero wearing the IC title, I just thought it's definitely worth mentioning. And here we are, what 30 years later almost with Ring of Honor, 26 years, something like that.
25, 6 years, yeah.
Yeah, and here we are with Ring of Honor, still kicking kind of to this day.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah,
Kind of. It is still
kind of.
kicking. It's
Sure.
not the same, but it is still kicking.
Sure.
But yeah, not really too much to say about this one. Just kind
No,
of
I love
cool.
it. That's a great spot for it too, is your number 7. Love it.
And if you did want to check it out, it is Eddie Guerrero and the Amazing Red versus the SATs is the matchup as well.
Yeah.
Number 6, this is where I did put a match on, but it's not because of the match. It's because of the moment of the match.
Okay.
And I'm taking this back to NXT when Tyler Breeze faced
Yeah.
Jushin Thunder Liger. This
Where well who was Liger? I thought he was a free agent. Okay.
No,
Who was
Liger
he
was with
signed
New
to?
Japan Pro Wrestling
Was he
still.
was he with New Japan at the time? Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
Liger's always been with New Japan Pro Wrestling.
All right.
And this was incredible, not just because it was New Japan, and WWE working together, much like we've seen with Pro Wrestling Noah this year with AJ Styles going over there to fight Marufuji. But this was Jushin Thunder Liger's only appearance ever for the WWF
Mhm.
as a
Yeah.
wrestler. This is the only
Which
match
is
he ever fought for
amazing.
them.
Which, by the way, you can hear Tyler Breeze talk about in the archives of this show. He came on the show and talked great things about this match and about preparing for this match. I loved hearing about all about it.
Absolutely. And I highly recommend checking that interview out from earlier this year. Hit that subscribe button while you're checking it out. That is greatly appreciated, of course. But yeah,
Beautiful.
just super cool to see Jushin Thunder Liger in a WWF ring. And he came out, they don't play it on the network or anything, but he did come out to that Jushin Liger music, which is awesome, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
just a really, really cool moment to see Liger in the WWF, WWE, whatever.
agreed. Love that. Good spot for it too. Good.
So my number 5 will probably end up being a different spot on my list if we did this list in a year. But we're
Okay.
still in the thick of things right now.
Okay. I
And
think I
I
see where you're going.
have to talk about WWE NXT TNA and the relationship between NXT and TNA wrestling right now.
Sure. Where are we starting? What's your pivotal?
I mean,
Like, are we gonna go? Do you want to go all the way back to Jordan going into the Royal Rumble? Because I
or
think
may,
that's kind of where it really
that
started.
that's the starting point for this arc of it.
Yeah.
But realistically, the real moment was Mickey James. Like that. Like
Yeah.
technically that's where I would put I would
Sure.
if you were to ask me like okay like this is still happening you can't put on your list then I would say Mickey James entering the Royal Rumble as the knockout champion. But
Sure. Think that to me, that was Vince saying, hey, this would be cool as a one-time thing. He never had any thoughts of it outside of a one-time thing. When Jordan came in, Triple H had all these thoughts of what can we do? What can like people like this? What can we keep doing?
Well,
You
I think
know,
I think then your pivotal moment would be when Jordan came out to challenge Roxy
for sure,
for the title,
for
right?
sure.
Roxana Perez or whatever.
I
That's where I
think,
think you start it.
yeah, especially if you want to go into the thick of things of how we're doing with NXT, because obviously the Royal Rumble has nothing to do with NXT. But then, yeah, you're right though. It starts with Jordan, but then eventually we get Joe Hendry, we get Frankie Kazarian, we get the Rascals all appearing in NXT. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the big one being Joe Hendry, like we said, and what he's doing now. And you and I talked about this a little bit, but I want to talk about it on air. Joe Hendry challenging for the TNA Heavyweight Championship against Nick Nemeth coming up.
Mhm.
Um, what's your take on all this? Let's start with that, and then I'll go into
I
my opinions on it.
I'm both. I'm with you and not with you. From what we talked about outside, I know you think it's a little bit too late. They're jumping the gun too late on Joe Hendry and his title reign. While I do agree with you, they should have pulled the trigger on this a month ago. I don't think that it would do anybody favors to not have Joe beat Nick Nemeth at Bound for Glory.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like at this point, yeah. Is it late? Yes. Is it too late? I don't think so. Um, if they screw up and Joe doesn't beat Nick Nemeth here, then just just sign him over to NXT and let them have him. What are you
I
doing at that point?
I just think both companies missed the ball because now when I say this, it's going to sound like I'm taking away from Joe Hendry, and I'm not. I love Joe Hendry. I think what he's doing is phenomenal. I think
Mhm.
he is a great talent. I'm a big fan of his work, but I do think that there is a shelf life on Joe Hendry before he is just a back to a mid card, not a mid card comedy act, But if they would have pulled the trigger, put the belt on him in Montreal in front of that huge crowd, and then had him simultaneously beat Ethan Page for
Thank you.
that NXT championship when he challenged for that. I think that it could have maybe shattered him up to that next level, and I think he could have stayed at that next level.
Yeah. You want to know the biggest surprise out of all this to me was how he even got to TNA in the first place. How did Triple H not see Joe Hendry's worth when Triple H was doing all that stuff in ICW?
Well,
You know,
yeah, he was. I'm sure he's been on the radar, but Joe Henry like kind of picked TNA because Scott D'Amore understood him,
yeah. I'm just
right?
like his ICW stuff was just
Oh
tremendous.
yeah, all the songs are great. That's going to be a list. We have to do a
Oh,
best Joe Henry entrance
100%.
list at some
We will
point.
be doing that. Yes.
Let's move on to number four here. I don't know if you're going to think this one is as good as I did, but I thought it was incredible when it happened. And I am talking about the Kenny Omega and the TNA Championship crossover.
Oh, yeah. I think I I don't think it was as good as it could have been, but I do think it was important. I
Hmm.
think it was really cool at the time. I despise the fact that we got the term uh, Forbidden Door out of this fucking angle. I hate that. But going right back and starting with Don Callis coming onto AEW television and starting that angle, I remember being, oh, okay, it looks like they want me to watch AEW every week because this is how they're going to get me on there.
Yeah,
And it worked
absolutely.
and it worked for a while. Putting Don Callis with Kenny Omega was genius.
Well, and
Genius.
you can even take this a step further, and it's not just Kenny Omega and TNA, but Kenny Omega, the belt collector, because he was also the
Yeah,
triple A world
that's
champion
right.
as well, right? So
Yeah.
to see that crossover between Kenny doing TNA, triple A, and Impact, or yeah, Impact Wrestling and AEW. Sorry, I'm getting all my initials confused here. But yeah, I just thought it was so well done and so different for that time. And it really did kick the ball off for, this whole, even kind of what we're
You
seeing with WWE.
and you know who I bet the most frustrated person this whole thing had to have been is Triple H. Because I guarantee Triple H is sitting there watching them do that, looking over, going, "That could be us. That could be us. We could be doing that. Vince, look what they're doing. We could be doing that." It must be so frustrating because I have a feeling he's been wanting to do stuff like this for years.
Yeah, I
And the
can
old
see
man
it.
was kind of holding him down and holding him down. So that's got to be frustrating if you're Triple H.
Absolutely it is. But he's doing it now, and as we talked about in my
And doing
number
a great
five,
job of it.
he's doing
Yeah.
a great job of it.
Yeah.
All right, so on to the number three. The number three in my heart is one of my favorites of all time.
Okay.
And we are talking about Ring of Honor versus CZW.
No, I don't know how I didn't know you were going to bring this up. Yeah. I remember a very drunken night in Windsor, Ontario. You and I were just full of pizza, wing, and a lot of cottage springs. And you made me watch this in its entirety.
The Cage of Death match.
Yeah.
What a great match. I don't remember that. But this whole feud, though, from start to finish was phenomenal. The promo
Yeah.
work in it was great. There's way too much to run through in this whole thing, but I mean, this was cool because Ring of Honor CCW would invade Ring of Honor shows,
Mhm.
and then Ring of Honor would invade CZW shows because they all
Yeah.
ran out of Philly, right? Then
Yeah.
they would do joint shows kind of where it'd be like CZW ran an afternoon show and then Ring of Honor would run like an evening show like the same night in the same venue.
Yeah.
And then it got really cool where like especially for the final blow off match, which is a pretty much a War Games match called the Cage of Death, which is a CZW staple match.
Hmm.
Not actual staples, like a staple match of the
Well,
company, but there are staples involved in it.
there are staples involved.
But half of the arena was delegated to Ring of Honor fans, and half the arena was
Yeah.
delegated to CZW fans. You got
Yeah.
like a
Wasn't that
really
cool?
like European soccer vibes, which was super, super cool. But yeah, this whole rivalry was fantastic, and I loved it, and I could watch it every day over and over and over again. And it made a lot of stars too. You even
It,
looking back on it now, like guys like Eddie Kingston were involved with this.
mhm.
Chris Hero, Ace Steel, Adam Pierce, like a lot of really cool names involved with it.
You had me with stars, and then you said Ace Steel. I don't
That's fair, but it gave him a good rub.
know.
All right, number two, where this one was really hard not to make my number one, but I stand by my number one, and I'm
Okay.
talking about Jerry Lawler versus ECW.
Yeah. Missed a big one. We're going to talk about this. Um, this would have, I can't figure out what your number one will be because this would have been my number one. I think
This
this is
was
the number one.
this was a definition of a win-win here.
No, no,
EC
no. This isn't just Jerry Lawler versus W. This is the whole thing, right? This is ECW's invasion of Raw in '97. The whole
it's
this
from
encompasses everything.
1997, the invasion of
Okay.
ECW to
Yeah.
Raw up until Jerry Lawler's match against Tommy Dreamer.
Okay. All right.
This collaboration was phenomenal. That Monday Night Raw with ECW talent, they had three matches on it. Sabu fell
Hmm.
off the R, jumped
Yeah.
off the R, but he fell.
He fell.
Taz and Mikey Whipwreck, Tommy Dreamer and Devon Dudley. It was
Hmm.
just and the energy and Paul Heyman getting to come on WWF TV and sell that pay-per-view. But I mean, this even goes back to Mind Games before that, where ECW was in the front row and half the talent didn't know that they were getting involved with this. Like the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Some of the talent were ready to get in a fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely they were. And could you imagine being told, "Hey, you got to spit beer on Justin Hawk Bradshaw"? Like, does he know?
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
Like Bruce Pritchard was hot about it. Oh yeah, like the whole thing was really, really well done. But
Yeah.
the promo work between Jerry Lawler and Paul Heyman was phenomenal. The realness of this, like ECW was like they felt real at the time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they got to promote their brand. Vince got to steal their stuff and make it the Attitude Era.
Hmm.
But if you really want a detailed look at this, then go back in the archives of the Classic Match Classroom because Anthony and I really break down all this. They made Rob Van Dam a huge star from this.
I think we dropped the ball just a little bit by not really asking Rob Van Dam a whole lot of questions about this when we had him on the show.
Yeah.
Now you only have so much time. When you have these guys come on your show, you only have so much time. You want to be respectful of your guests' time. You can't ask 2,000 questions. There's
Well,
always going to be questions you wish you asked. This is mine for Rob Van Dam.
We did get him to talk about the night Jerry Lawler showed up in the ECW
Mm-hmm.
arena, which is
Mm-hmm.
the best part of this whole angle by far. But the thing
This is
with like,
probably one of only two times where I actually liked the use of the blackout.
yeah,
ECW overused the blackout
yeah, but that was like a thing
by
with him. It
far.
was great.
Yeah, but the Lawler and the Pillman are the two times I'm like, all right, I really like that.
Yeah, the Pillman one was cool. But that
Hmm.
brings us to number one.
All right, I
Number
don't know what this
one,
could be. I know it's not what I want it to be. So
number one on my list is something that when you say it out loud, doesn't sound like it should be the number one until you take a look at what it actually is.
okay,
And I am talking about Taz versus Mike Awesome
okay,
for the ECW World Heavyweight Championship.
yeah,
You have a contracted WWF wrestler facing a
yep,
contracted WCW wrestler inside of an ECW ring
or an ECW title.
or the ECW heavyweight title.
This is exactly what I thought you were going to leave off. I didn't think this was going to be your number one, and I'm so happy it is.
How could it not
Um,
be? As soon as I made
agreed,
this, as
agreed.
soon as I made this list, I was
Yeah,
like, well, my number one's easy.
because you want to talk about interpromotional, you don't get more interpromotional than this.
This is the big
This
three.
this and this stuff, and people, you have to understand, this is in like 1999 or 2000.
This is, yeah,
This
2000.
this stuff didn't happen.
No,
This stuff did not happen
no.
at all, ever.
So this would be the equivalent right now of if the TNA wrestling champion was Dolph Ziggler
Mhm.
and he was going to jump to AEW, and then the WWF sent, I don't know, sent
No,
Gunter.
listen, man. This man, no, yes, a Gunter. Because I say, because Taz and well, at least Taz, he was. It wasn't one of their biggest stars, but he definitely wasn't a mid card. They were
Yeah,
pushing him at
yeah.
the time, and I don't know about Mike Awesome. They weren't they weren't pushing him in WCW,
Well,
but
he
he was a
had
big
just
deal.
showed up. He hadn't even like he showed
He
up
hadn't started
two
yet, eh?
weeks before that and laid out Kevin
True.
Nash. That's a huge debut, right?
This is before he became the fat chick Thriller.
Yes. Well, Mike Awesome was the ECW World Champion.
Yes.
He signed a contract breaching his ECW contract to go to
Hmm.
WCW,
Hmm.
showed up on Nitro while he was the ECW champion, and then proceeded to almost get WCW sued in the process. But then they worked out this thing with Taz and Heyman, and yeah, the whole thing was crazy, man. Like to
I'm
have a
so happy this is your number one because this is a massive moment in wrestling
yeah,
that a lot of people didn't see.
yeah.
A lot of people didn't even know this existed until the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD came out. A lot of people learned about it for the first time on that DVD.
Well,
Uh,
what a lot of people forget is after this, Taz was your ECW heavyweight champion. And
yes,
then he showed up on SmackDown the next week and fought Triple H for the
yeah,
and a WWF champion versus the ECW champion, which is
yeah.
another cool moment. Yeah,
And
that's
this is we talked about this a bit last week. This is what I still kind of like Taz too.
yeah. Taz was awesome back here. Taz was an incredible talent in ECW. I really enjoyed his work. But that's my
Yeah, and
list.
and his first few months in WWE as well.
Anything glaring that I missed on my list?
Um, No, because I guess it's tied into the Kenny Omega stuff, but we have talked about Josh and Christian,
Yeah,
but that's tied into the Kenny Omega stuff, so that's covered. Um, I mean, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but it's more of a match, not a moment. So I don't know what to talk about, but I always loved the 1992 stuff with Hulk Hogan in New Japan, the stuff he did with Great Muta.
yeah.
Uh, that probably would have made like my number seven or my number six, but you know, I can't argue with the majority of your list though.
Yeah, I mean, there was some stuff I looked at, and then some of the stuff was matches, right? Like Joe versus Kabashi would have been number one,
Mhm.
probably. Like if we're going matches, like that match is
Yeah,
unreal. I had on as honorable mention the promo that Mick Foley cut where he spit on the WCW title
yeah,
in ECW.
in East W. Yeah,
I almost put this one on my list, but I just didn't think that the company was big enough. But do you remember the company Evolve?
Yeah.
when Paul Heyman showed up and Evolve in the
Oh,
ECW
okay.
arena, made his
Yeah.
return to the arena. That was a
Yeah.
huge moment.
That's right.
Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton, they had a tag match in ECW where Arn teamed with Terry Funk and Bobby Eaton
Hmm.
teamed with Sabu. That was kind of crazy. And then
I've got
there's
I've
a
got
bunch.
one. Just a couple months ago, the Destiny crew showed up at Demand Lucha. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that was big in our area.
What else do we have here? And then there's just a bunch of title unification matches that were kind of cool. Ric Flair and Rick Martel for the AWA and NWA title, but again, those are
Mhm.
more matches. Bob Backlund and Ric Flair did it. Bob
I
Backlund and
al- I
Harley
always liked
Race.
the teased interpromotional stuff, even though it wasn't interpromotional. Um, Ric Flair showing up in WWF with
Yep.
the world's title. The Outsiders showing up on Nitro, pretending to still work up north. That stuff was always cool to me, even though it doesn't count for your list because it's not really interpromotional stuff.
Yeah.
But I always love those teases.
You had the AWA trying to work with I don't know what it was. I don't think it was world class. Maybe it was still world class at the time or Continental Championship Wrestling when it
Hmm.
was Kerry Von Erich and Jerry Lawler for the belts. They did the unification match. But
And
yeah.
even back in the day, Vince did a lot of work with, well, he did a lot of work with the NWA. He also did a lot of work with WCW. People don't remember, WWE was on TNT television.
Well, I
You
was
know,
gonna one I just thought about that could be a great honorable mention, and even maybe a moment is McMemphis when Vince played a heel in Memphis.
I love that stuff.
That's
And a
fun
lot of
stuff.
people don't remember that even happened. That was Mr. McMahon before Mr. McMahon was Mr. McMahon.
Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
that was like the precursor to that character.
But yeah, that's my list. I think
Yeah, I like it. I like that. Hopefully next week I'll have a list ready. I just didn't have time this week. As you can see, I'm dealing. You can't really tell she's sick right here, but I'm dealing with a couple sick kids and a sick me. Not a good week. So
no,
much sickness.
no.
So much sickness. So dealing with all that shit. Didn't have time for a list. Next week, hopefully we'll have a list or a guest. You never know.
Yeah,
We have a finger in a pie or two. Got
yeah. We've
got a
been
couple
talking.
bites on some interviews, so you
Yeah,
never know what's going to happen.
hopefully we can pull something together soon. But
Mhm.
it's year end time, so we're working.
That too. All right, man. Well, good job on that. One of these days, you will have to do an interpromotional thing.
Hmm.
We'll have to, who should we work with? There's so many great podcasts out there. Who should we
Working
invade? If we were to invade a podcast, who would you invade?
all day long. R3 with Jonah, baby.
R3, baby. Um, I can't. Hey, listen, if you're driving to New York, I'll jump shotgun. Okay.
And big shout out also, check out
Brooklyn,
Barry
Brooklyn.
Wrestling. Check out Barry Wrestling. They're doing their mystery show this weekend. And on top
Yeah.
of that, head over to their YouTube page with the brand new Barry Wrestling Rush Hour show that debuted last week. Very, very happy with the
No,
debut.
put that down.
Very, no, I am happy with it, Mike. I will not put it down, okay?
Put it. Put down
I
the
am
screwdriver.
that is a good cue to take it home, I think. But yeah,
It really is.
check out Barry Wrestling's Rush Hour. It's a project that I've been very hands-on working with, and I'm very happy with week one. Every Tuesday at 7 p.m. And you can catch us every Thursday afternoons. Take us home.
Every single Thursday, right here on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcast, you'll find us every single Thursday. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Give us a review. We don't get those anymore. Give us a review. Those are good for us too. Do all that stuff, and until next time, um, you know what? I got nothing witty to say. You have been counted out.
Cheers.